silence before the dawn of kings, beneath a sky veiled in shadow, there rose a falcon. Not a mere bird of prey, but a god, forged from the heavens and the bloodline of divinity. His name was Horus, and his story is one of cosmic war, betrayal, magic, and resurrection. He is the god who sued his uncle for the throne and won. But to reduce him to just that would be to miss the storm of myth and memory that surrounds him. Horus is not a single tale. He is a legacy that unfolds in layers, each one older and more enigmatic than the last. We begin where most gods end, in conflict. A throne stolen, a father murdered, a child hidden in the swamps, protected by scorpions and spells. A desert god determined to erase a bloodline. A mother who defied death to bring back life. The battle between Horus and Set is not merely the fight of nephew against uncle. It is the eternal tension between order and chaos, truth and trickery, sky and storm. But Horus's journey is more than vengeance. It is a map of the soul's evolution, a mirror to our own battles for identity, justice, and inner sovereignty. This tale moves between myths. Sometimes Horus is the Elder, the forgotten falcon god of the earliest dynasties, soaring above the land before Osiris was ever born. Sometimes he is the innocent child, the divine son of Isis, cradled in secrecy while danger looms. And sometimes he is the warrior, blinded, betrayed, humiliated, yet still rising to face the storm. But which Horus are you thinking of? The elder? The son? The child? There is more than one, and each one holds a fragment of the whole. This is not just mythology, it is memory encoded in metaphor. It is the story that crowned pharaohs and inspired prophets. It's found in temple walls, in royal names, and in symbols we still wear today. The eye that sees through illusion, the falcon that flies above chaos, the king who reclaims the throne of truth. This is the complete story of Horus, the god who dared to rise, not just to power, but to purpose. And through him, perhaps, we too remember what it means to fight not for revenge, but for balance. Before the drama of Osiris, Isis, and Set unfolded into the mythic stage of divine vengeance and celestial courtroom battles, there was another Horus. Older, more enigmatic, and largely forgotten in modern retellings. This was Horus the Elder, one of the earliest deities to rise in the religious consciousness of ancient Egypt. Long before the unified dynasties and their sprawling stone monuments in the pre-dynastic city of Nekhan, Horus soared across the skies of early belief. Here, the falcon was not a symbol borrowed from later myth, it was the divine itself. The people of Nekhan didn't just worship Horus, they built their identity around him. He was the patron of their kings, the eye in the heavens watching over the land, the silent circling force of divine order. Horus the Elder wasn't born of Isis's magic or Osiris's tragedy. He predated that entire mythos. He was the sky itself. His right eye was the sun, shining with clarity, justice, and strength. His left eye, the moon, watched over the night with mystery and rhythm. His wings were stretched from horizon to horizon, spanning the cosmos. In this form, Horus wasn't fighting for a throne. He already embodied it. He didn't inherit power. He was power, encoded into the natural order of the world. Even in these early times, the mythic tension between Horus and Set had already begun to take shape, not as a personal grudge, but as a symbolic clash of natural forces. Horus, the sky god, brought light, law, and pattern. Set, the god of the desert and chaos, represented unpredictability, violence, and disruption. Their struggle was not yet familiar but cosmic. The sky versus the storm, the cultivated land versus the encroaching sands. This early antagonism laid the foundation for a theme that would echo across all of Egyptian theology: the constant dance between order and disorder, Ma'at and his Fet. Over time, Horus the Elder began to merge with another rising solar deity, Ra, the sun god. As Egyptian religion evolved and expanded, deities often fused together, creating new divine expressions that reflected political, cosmic, and theological shifts. From this synthesis emerged Ra-Horakhti, Ra, who is Horus of the horizons. In this form, Horus was no longer just the sky. He became the sun in motion, the force of light traveling across the heavens. He was the dawn, the zenith, and the twilight. He was the eye that never blinked, the heat that sustained and scorched, the golden current of time itself. This fusion did not erase the identity of Horus the Elder. It amplified him. In Ra-Horakhti, the gods were no longer competing voices. They became layered truths, each reinforcing the other. Horus was the watcher, the eye, the embodiment of the horizon, and Ra was the energy, the fire, the divine intellect. Together, they symbolized vision and will, sight and action, clarity and force. This theological evolution also served a political function. As Upper and Lower Egypt were unified and the pharaohs claiming divine rights, Horus became the face of kingship itself. He was the original living god, the prototype for all rulers who would follow. But it's crucial to remember, this Horus was not the child hidden in swamps, nor the warrior blinded in battle. He was not a symbol of survival. He was sovereignty itself. He was not the avenger of a father's death. He was the ancient law before any such story unfolded. His mythology is quieter, less dramatic, but no less profound. He represents an era of divinity that was cosmological, not narrative. A time when gods were the elements themselves, not characters in a drama. As the cult of Osiris gained prominence, and the myth of the divine family became central to Egyptian spirituality, Horus the Elder was gradually overshadowed by his more famous counterpart, Horus the Younger, the son of Isis. But traces of the Elder remain, hidden in texts, etched in temple walls, and embedded in symbols. He is there in every depiction of the winged sun disk, in the falcon-headed guardian who stands beside pharaohs, in the balance of the celestial bodies above. To understand Horus fully, one must begin here, not in battle but in silence, not in revenge but in rhythm. Horus the Elder is not the hero of a story. He is the sky, watching. He is the principle of vision, balance, and solar truth that transcends human conflict. He is the divine presence that came before the myths, before the dynasties, before even the names were carved in stone. He is the first breath of Ma'at, the elder falcon, the god who rose not from vengeance but from vision. And though his story is often eclipsed, his wings still cast a shadow across the soul of Egypt. In the ancient divine tapestry of Egypt, a shadow fell over the heavens, a crisis that would rupture the harmony of the gods and set the stage for one of mythology's most enduring dramas. This was the Osirian crisis, the tale of betrayal and resurrection, of power seized and innocence born in exile. At its center stood 4 celestial figures whose names would echo through eternity: Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. What began as a divine family quickly unraveled into a tragic epic of jealousy, death, and spiritual defiance. Osiris, the benevolent ruler of the gods and lord of the afterlife, symbolized order, regeneration, and kingship. He brought civilization to Egypt, teaching agriculture, law, and justice. Loved by mortals and revered by gods, Osiris embodied Ma'at, the principle of balance and rightness in the world. But his light cast a long shadow, and in that darkness stood his brother, Set. Set was the embodiment of chaos, the wild desert wind, the storm that could not be tamed. Unlike his noble brother, Set craved power for its own sake. The sight of Osiris on the throne burned him with envy, and so he devised a plan both brilliant and cruel. Set hosted a grand banquet and presented a beautifully crafted, ornate coffin, tailored exactly to Osiris's measurements. He announced that whoever fit the coffin perfectly could claim it as a gift. Curious, Osiris stepped inside. In an instant, the lid slammed shut. Set sealed it, locked it, and cast the coffin into the Nile. The god of life was now encased in death. But Set's treachery did not end there. Fearing Osiris's return, he later retrieved the coffin, dismembered Osiris's body into 14 parts, and scattered them across the land, turning Egypt into a map of divine dismemberment, yet where chaos schemes, love endures. Isis, sister and wife of Osiris, rose in quiet defiance. She was more than a goddess of magic. She was the pulse of resurrection itself. Guided by determination and divine intuition, she set out across Egypt, gathering the scattered pieces of her beloved. With the help of her sister Nephthys, who turned against Set out of compassion, Isis reassembled Osiris. But one piece was missing: his phallus, lost to the Nile. Undeterred, Isis crafted a replacement through her magic, and in an act of divine alchemy, conceived a child from the breath of resurrection. Thus was born Horus the Younger, not in splendor, but in secret. He did not cry in golden halls, but in the shadowed reeds of the swamps of Kamis, where Isis hid from Set's relentless gaze. This Horus was not the sovereign sky god of Nekon. He was the hope of a broken lineage, the divine answer to a cosmic crime. His birth was not celebrated with trumpets, but guarded in whispers and prayers. Isis became the first protector, a mother whose magic had given life to a son destined to challenge a tyrant. But she was not alone in her guardianship. Divine forces gathered around the child to protect him. Sekhet, the scorpion goddess, lent her venom to those who would strike in defense. Neith, the primal creator goddess, whispered wisdom and cloaked the infant from Set's fury. Wadjet, the cobra goddess of protection, coiled around the child's refuge with lethal devotion. These were not passive figures. They were divine sentinels, embodying nature's fierce will to preserve what is sacred. And so, in the shadows of exile, Horus grew, not in power, but in purpose. The image of Isis cradling the infant Horus became one of the most sacred icons in all of Egyptian spirituality. She was not just a mother, she was the vessel of resistance, the living shrine of hope. Horus, too, was more than a child. He was a symbol of divine continuity, the soul of kingship reborn through suffering. His very existence was a challenge to Set's dominion, a quiet promise that the throne would one day be reclaimed. But his early years were not safe. Set's spies scoured the marshes. Poison, disease, and deception lurked in every corner. Legends tell of Horus being stung by a scorpion or afflicted with deadly fever. In one version, it is the desperate prayer of Isis that draws Ra's attention, and Thoth, the god of wisdom and healing, is dispatched to cure the child. In another, it is Isis's own magic that revives her son. Every tale reinforces the same truth. This was no ordinary boy. He was divinely born, divinely protected, and destined to restore divine order. The Osirian crisis is more than just a myth of divine murder. It is a reflection of cosmic imbalance, a rupture that requires love, sacrifice, and magic to mend. It introduces us to the child hero archetype, born not into glory but into struggle. It reminds us that sometimes the seeds of restoration are sown in the darkest soil, that in the silence of exile, greatness is prepared, and that even in the face of death, the divine finds a way to rise. Horus the Younger would not remain hidden forever. His time in the reeds was a beginning, a preparation for a war that would decide not just the fate of gods, but the soul of Egypt itself. In the sacred hush of the papyrus marshes, beneath the cloaking mists of Chemis, a god learned to crawl. Horus, now known as Hippocrates or Hapakred. The child Horus was not born into temples or thrones, but into hiding. He was divine, yes, but vulnerable. A boy marked by prophecy, wrapped in the arms of his mother, guarded by the shadows. This was not Horus the Avenger, nor Horus the crowned king. This was the god as a child, exiled and exposed, watched over by scorpions and whispers, his story whispered through lullabies and spells. To protect this fragile embodiment of destiny, the goddess Serket, mistress of Vanum and guardian of thresholds, dispatched 7 sacred scorpions. They did not sting in vengeance, they guarded in silence. Each one bore a divine name, a purpose, a place around the mother and her child. As Isis traveled the countryside in search of sanctuary, these scorpions moved like shadows, warning of danger, hiding them from those who would report to Set. This was not a journey of triumph, but one of quiet survival, where every step was laced with divine tension. The mother of resurrection had become a fugitive, and her son, the seed of future kingship, was still learning to breathe. One of the most poignant tales from this time speaks of a moment of terrible vulnerability. Isis, weary and seeking rest, approaches a town for shelter but is turned away by the wealthy residents. Forced to take refuge in the home of a humble woman, Isis lays her child down, but vengeance brews. One of the scorpions, angry at the insult to the goddess, stings the child of the wealthy woman. The mother, panicked, calls for help, and Isis, upon learning what has happened, sets aside her pain. She utters the sacred words, healing incantations passed from Ra to Thoth to her, and the poisoned child is saved. But fate has more tests. In other versions of the legend, Horus himself is stung or poisoned while playing. His body grows cold, life draining from him. Isis wails. Her scream shakes the heavens. And in response, Thoth descends with words of power, reviving the boy and restoring his breath. This narrative isn't just myth. It is a mythic mirror of every mother's fear, every child's fragility, and every divine intervention that comes not through thunder, but through compassion. It is a story of how even gods can be endangered, how power can rest in tiny, trembling hands. And it lays the foundation for an archetype that would echo across cultures and centuries: the divine child. Hippocrates becomes not just a god, but a symbol of purity untouched by corruption, of potential hidden within weakness, of truth sheltered in innocence. In later Egyptian iconography, he is often shown with his finger to his lips, not as a sign of silence, but as the eternal gesture of sacred mystery, the whisper of knowledge too deep for words. This image, the child protected by gods, nearly lost to death and revived by divine power, would reverberate far beyond Egypt. It would appear in the child Krishna of Hindu lore, hidden from tyrants and nurtured in exile. In Jesus of Nazareth, sought by Herod and preserved by holy flight. In every tale where a sacred child is threatened, preserved, and destined to rise, we hear echoes of Harpocrates. But the story began in the marshes, where scorpions watched and goddesses wept, where the future of Egypt pulsed in the small body of a sleeping god. The child in exile reminds us that even the greatest light begins in shadow, that divinity can tremble and still survive, that innocence, though soft, holds within it the power to heal and transform, and that sometimes it is not the warrior or the king who changes the world, but the child lying quietly in the reeds, dreaming of the throne he has yet to claim. When Horus emerged from exile and stepped into the arena of divine destiny, he did not come as a child cradled in protection. He came as a warrior forged by pain, a prince ready to reclaim the throne stolen from his father. And standing between him and that throne was Set, the god of storms, deserts, chaos, and relentless cunning. What followed was not a single confrontation, but a trial by battle, a legendary series of 14 contests, each one more outrageous, brutal, and symbolic than the last. This was not a war of armies, it was a war of wills, fought in divine metaphors, a cosmic showdown between chaos and truth. The first of these battles was elemental, the hippopotamus duel. In Egyptian symbology, the hippo was a creature of raw, unpredictable power, dangerous in its fury, untamable in its terrain. Horus and Set transformed into these monstrous animals, crashing through the waters, thrashing with the weight of their unresolved history. Set, the red beast, roared through the river, embodying the desert's thirst for domination. Horus, the younger yet divinely anointed, answered with precision and controlled rage. This was not just a fight. It was the manifestation of ancient forces clashing in the primordial Nile. Then came the infamous stone boat race, where the gods were challenged to craft vessels from stone and sail them. Set, ever the brute, carves a massive hulking boat. Horus, with foresight and cunning, constructs his from wood and disguises it with white chalk to look like stone. When they take to the waters, Set's stone boat sinks, and Horus glides across the surface, light, clever, adaptive. This was more than a trick, it was a lesson. In the face of brute force, intelligence and subtlety can navigate the storm. But not all contests were clean. Set, desperate and cunning, turned to underhanded means. In one tale, he blinds Horus, gouging out his left eye, the sacred moon eye, the source of inner vision, healing, and balance. The loss was devastating, not just physically but spiritually. Horus, in pain, was momentarily undone. Yet even in this defeat, the seed of resurrection stirred. Thoth, the god of wisdom, stepped forward and healed the eye, restoring it not just in form, but in meaning. The eye of Horus, also called the Wejot, became the most powerful symbol of healing, wholeness, and protection in Egyptian cosmology. It was not just an eye, it was a map of restoration, a testament that what is broken can be made whole again. In one of the strangest episodes of the battles, Set attempts to sexually dominate Horus, an act intended to disgrace and subjugate. But Horus, anticipating the attack, traps Set's seed in his hands, then secretly places his own onto Set's lettuce, Set's favorite food. When the gods are called to investigate who has dominated whom, the truth is revealed through divine detection. Set, shamed and undone, is exposed not as a conqueror, but as a fool. This battle was never just physical. It was mythic, psychological, sexual, spiritual. Every confrontation carried layers of symbolism, each move echoing deeper truths about power, identity, and justice. As these contests unfolded, the gods of the Ennead, the great council of divine beings, watched and debated. They did not rush to judgment. Theirs was a cosmic trial, measured in ages, balanced between tradition and transformation. Some favored Set, the older god, the proven force. Others leaned toward Horus, the rightful heir, the son of a murdered king. The universe itself seemed to pause as order and chaos collided, not just in flesh, but in meaning. The gods' indecision reflected the complexity of the contest. Set was not just evil, he was necessary. Chaos, after all, plays a role in renewal. But Horus did not merely represent order, he represented the rightful synthesis of wisdom, experience, and destiny. In this tension, the myths explore a profound truth. Real justice cannot be rushed. Truth must be tested. Power must be proven. Legitimacy must be earned. And yet, through every wound, every trick, every loss, Horus rose again. His resilience was not just his strength, it was his divinity. The eye he lost became the eye he restored. His pain became a path to wisdom. His humiliation, a mirror of the cosmos's own brokenness seeking healing. In this trial by battle, Horus did not simply win. He transformed, and in doing so, he redefined kingship, not as the brute force of domination, but as the courageous dance between wound and will, between fall and return. By the end of the duels, the gods had witnessed more than a contest. They had watched the forging of a new kind of leader, a divine being tempered by exile, sharpened by betrayal, and awakened through conflict. Horus had not just challenged Set. He had revealed the flaws in the old order and offered a vision of rule rooted in renewal. And while the crown had not yet touched his brow, the world had begun to shift. The sky falcon had flown through storm and shadow. Now, the gods had to decide if he was ready to wear the throne of eternity. After the final blow of battle had been struck and the dust of divine conflict settled momentarily, the war between Horus and Set shifted from physical confrontation to celestial litigation. The gods of Egypt, weary of endless duels and symbolic violence, summoned a divine court in the sacred city of Heliopolis. Here, in the realm of solar knowledge and cosmic authority, the Ennead convened to render judgment not by force, but by law. It was not just Horus's fate that hung in the balance, it was the very fabric of divine order. For 80 years, this court trial dragged on, as slow as sand through an hourglass, testing not only the patience of the gods, but the endurance of truth itself. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, served as the court scribe, recording every argument, every deceit, every divine whisper. Known for his clarity and neutrality, Thoth represented the intellect of Ma'at, the ability to discern right from wrong, not through violence, but through observation and logic. Yet even with Thoth's reason guiding the record, the trial was anything but straightforward. Set, clever and unrelenting, knew that brute strength alone would no longer serve him. So he turned to schemes, manipulation, and bribes. He tried to sway the gods with promises of wealth, protection, and power. In the court of the divine, even immortals could be tempted. Ra, the solar patriarch and father of the gods, presided with ancient authority, but also with a troubling hesitance. Though Ra had once fused with Horus as Ra-Harakti, in this moment he seemed uncertain. Set was, after all, a necessary part of the cosmic order, destructive, yes, but essential to the balancing act of creation. And Ra, growing weary with age and perhaps disillusioned by endless conflict, wavered. He did not want to be rushed into judgment. In some tales, he withdrew into silence. In others, he allowed the trial to stretch endlessly, hoping the gods would resolve the matter without him. But balance cannot be delayed forever. Injustice corrodes even the heavens if left unresolved. While the gods deliberated, Isis acted. No longer just the grieving widow or nurturing mother, Isis stepped forward as strategist and sorceress. She saw that truth alone would not sway the divine court. So she turned to craft. In one version of the tale, she disguises herself as a humble woman and approaches Set while he is alone. In conversation, she tells a parable. A man's son has had his inheritance stolen by a wicked uncle. Who should rightfully rule? Set, not knowing he's being tricked, proclaims that of course the son should be restored. At that moment, Isis drops the illusion and reveals her identity. The gods cannot ignore the irony. Set has just condemned himself with his own logic. The courtroom murmurs with the divine recognition. Truth has spoken, not through force, but through cunning. Yet still, Ra remains unmoved. Even this poetic justice does not ignite his decision. The trial hangs in stasis, the gods divided, Horus exhausted. It is then that Hathor, goddess of love, music, and joy, steps into the silence with an unexpected strategy: pleasure. She approaches Ra not with arguments or accusations, but with laughter and affection. In some versions, she exposes herself, shocking him into a smile. In others, she simply reminds him of beauty of life, of the sun's joy in illuminating the world. Whatever method she uses, it works. Ra's mood softens. The light returns to his gaze. And with that shift, the weight of decision can no longer be postponed. Ra finally renders his judgment. Horus, the son of Osiris, the child of prophecy, the warrior who endured trial and exile, is declared the rightful heir to the throne of Egypt. The verdict does not simply restore a birthright, it realigns the cosmic order. Set is not destroyed, but banished. In some myths, he is sent to guard the sun, God's boat in the underworld, battling the serpent of chaos every night. In others, he is simply cast out. His reign of terror ended. His role as adversary continues in cosmic duties, but he never rules again. With this judgment, the great courtroom of the gods falls silent. The long trial has ended not with the clang of weapons, but with the measured voice of divine authority. Horus does not celebrate in arrogance. His victory is tempered by all he has endured: the exile, the wounds, the loss, the years of waiting. He does not rise as a child of privilege, but as a king forged in struggle. The cosmic court case is a multifaceted myth. It teaches that justice is not always swift, that even gods must wrestle with their shadows, and that truth requires not only strength, but strategy, patience, and allies. It shows that sometimes the divine needs a mother's wisdom and a lover's light to move forward. And most of all, it confirms what Horus has always embodied, that kingship is not inherited through blood alone. It is earned through endurance, clarity, and the refusal to let chaos write the final word. At long last, the divine court had spoken, and the celestial storm began to calm. The battles had ended, the arguments had been heard, and the gods had rendered their final judgment. Horus, child of Osiris and Isis, warrior of restoration, bearer of the healed eye, was crowned king of Egypt. But this coronation was unlike any the world had ever seen. It was not merely the placing of a crown on a brow, it was the harmonizing of earth and sky, of chaos and order, of the ancient past and the divine future. Horus received the double crown, the Shent, a sacred headdress that unified the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt. In that moment, two lands became one. and with them, two destinies merged into a single path forward. This was more than political symbolism. To wear the double crown was to embody the balance of the Nile's duality: fertile valley and shifting delta, sun and flood, breath and silence. As Horus stood crowned, he became not just a ruler of Egypt, but a living manifestation of Ma'at. Every pharaoh who would follow him, every king seated on the throne of the Black Land, would wear that crown and take on the title, the living Horus. This was no metaphor. It was a sacred role, a spiritual inheritance, a responsibility to carry the legacy of divine kingship forward with each breath. From the moment of his coronation, Horus became more than myth. He became the standard by which every ruler would be measured. Pharaohs were no longer merely human rulers. They were Horus in form, in purpose, and in divine sanction. Their triumphs were echoes of Horus's victory. Their failures, cracks in the structure of cosmic order. As the living Horus, each king stood as a bridge between the people and the gods, between the material and the eternal. His authority wasn't just political, it was spiritual, inherited not through lineage alone, but through alignment with Horus's sacred legacy. One of the oldest surviving artifacts of Egyptian civilization, the Nama Palette, captures this transformative moment in mytho-historical form. It depicts the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single ruler, believed to be Narmer, the first pharaoh. At the top of the palette, the Horus falcon hovers above the papyrus reeds, a symbol of conquest and divine oversight. Horus, the god who fought for the throne, had now become the god who watched over it. His eye guided the actions of kings. His wings shielded the balance of the land. His presence became inseparable from power itself. And this divine relationship was engraved not just in imagery, but in language. Pharaonic inscriptions from temple walls to tombs often included the Horus name, one of the 5 great names of the king. This title always appeared in a rectangular frame known as a serek, topped with the falcon of Horus perched in regal observation. Before the cartouche, before the birth name, before the throne name, came the Horus name. A reminder that the pharaoh ruled not by his own will, but by the will of Horus made flesh. In every coronation ritual, in every monument built, in every prayer whispered by priest or peasant, Horus's kingship echoed. It was a reminder that rulership was not meant for exploitation, but for restoration. That to lead was not to dominate, but to harmonize. The crowning of Horus was the crowning of Egypt itself, not just as a nation, but as a cosmic order returned to its rightful flow. And through every king who stood in his place, that sacred falcon continued to soar, not as a memory, but as a living truth. The story of Horus did not end with his coronation. In fact, it only began to take on new life, transforming from narrative to symbol, from myth to legacy. Of all the powerful icons that emerged from the saga of Horus, none is more enduring than the Eye of Horus, also known as the Wedjat. It is a symbol that bridges science and spirit, protection and perception, myth and mathematics. Born from violence and restored by wisdom, the eye became more than a part of Horus's face. It became a map of healing, a sigil of divine intelligence, and a code that has rippled across cultures and centuries. According to the myth, when Set tore out Horus's left eye during one of the many confrontations, it was Thoth, god of wisdom and measurement, who reassembled it. But he did not restore it as it once was. He made it whole through sacred geometry. The parts of the Wedjat eye were understood by ancient Egyptians as specific fractions: 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 1/64, each representing not just a portion of the eye, but a portion of sensory experience: smell, sight, thought, hearing, taste, and touch. Yet when all the fractions were added, they equaled 63/64, imperfect by a single sliver. That missing piece symbolized the mystery, the unknowable, the divine breath that completes what logic alone cannot. It was not an error, it was a revelation. This unique combination of mathematical exactness and spiritual metaphor made the Eye of Horus a profoundly powerful tool. It became a sacred diagram, not only used in magic and medicine, but studied for its anatomical and metaphysical insight. In modern times, researchers have noticed striking resemblances between the layout of the wedjat and the human brain's thalamic region. Some have even proposed that the ancient Egyptians embedded neurological knowledge into their symbolism, placing intuition and science in seamless dialogue. But its uses were never purely academic. The eye was worn as an amulet by kings and commoners alike. It was placed on tombs to protect the dead in their journey through the afterlife. It adorned the sarcophagi of pharaohs, the walls of temples, the wrappings of mummies. Its presence signified protection, not from punishment, but from fragmentation. It promised wholeness, return, and sight beyond sight. Even today, the Eye of Horus continues to appear in places far removed from the Nile. It's etched into jewelry worn by spiritual seekers, embedded in the iconography of video games and science fiction films, painted on the fuselage of spacecrafts, and referenced in speculative theories about ancient wisdom and extraterrestrial contact. Its adaptability across cultures and mediums speaks to its universal resonance. The symbol still whispers something ancient to the soul, that to truly see is to heal, and that restoration is more sacred than revenge. The eye also exists in duality. The right eye of Horus corresponds to the sun, Ra, symbolizing outer vision, illumination, and action. The left eye, torn and healed, is linked to the moon, Tehuti or Thoth, symbolizing intuition, rhythm, and memory. This dual vision, solar and lunar, masculine and feminine, conscious and subconscious, teaches that wisdom is found in balance. To follow Horus is to learn to see with both eyes, to discern the outer world with reason, and the inner world with mystery. This dual nature, along with its embedded sacred geometry and cosmic resonance, made the Eye of Horus deeply influential in esoteric traditions far beyond Egypt. In Kemetism, the revivalist spiritual path rooted in ancient Egyptian belief, the eye is a core symbol of divine balance and awakening. In Freemasonry, though interpretations vary, the all-seeing eye motif carries echoes of Horus's restored sight, watchful, illuminating, and sovereign. Across the arc of spiritual history, the eye has endured not simply as an emblem, but as a lens through which humanity continues to seek clarity, protection, and transcendence. Horus may have claimed the throne in myth, but through the eye he claimed something even greater: timelessness. His story now lives in every glance toward the unknown, every attempt to heal what has been broken, every symbol we draw to remind ourselves that what is lost can be made whole again. And through the eye, we are still learning to see. In the modern age of comparative mythology and digital theology, few ancient deities have sparked as much debate as Horus, particularly when placed alongside Jesus of Nazareth. Across countless forums, documentaries, and speculative books, people have drawn lines between the stories of these two divine figures. Both are said to be born of a miraculous conception. Both are described as divine sons with hidden childhoods. Both face powerful enemies, experience symbolic deaths, and are ultimately exalted as kings. To the curious seeker or skeptical researcher, these parallels seem more than coincidental. But as with all myths, It's not the surface details that matter most. It's the structure of meaning beneath them. Yes, Horus was conceived by Isis through magical means after the death of Osiris. Yes, he spent his early years in hiding from the forces of chaos. Yes, he rose in defiance against injustice, was wounded, healed, and declared king. These narrative motifs, virgin mother, divine child, struggle against evil, restoration, and triumph, echo through many spiritual traditions, from Krishna in India to Dionysus in Greece, and of course Jesus in Judea. But similarity does not imply plagiarism. Myth is not a competition of originality. It is a reflection of shared human longing. The need to believe that suffering can give birth to salvation, that innocence can survive exile, that truth, no matter how wounded, can rise again and reign. Scholars caution against treating Horus and Jesus as interchangeable figures. The cultural, historical, and theological contexts in which these stories emerge are vastly different. Horus belongs to a cosmology where gods battle for cosmic order through metaphysical drama. Jesus operates within a framework of covenant, prophecies, and spiritual redemption, rooted in Hebrew tradition. To collapse one into the other is to miss the depth and dignity of both. Still, it is not hard to see why Horus has become a focal point in spiritual reinterpretation. His story is rich with archetypes. He is the child of sorrow and the warrior of light. He is the wounded king, the restored son, the ruler who rises not through conquest, but through endurance. In a time when many people are seeking spiritual truths outside of institutional religion, Horus offers an ancient mirror, not as a copy, but as a complement. A reminder that the divine has many names, many faces, and many stories, and that all of them, in their own way, speak to the eternal longing of the human soul. In the end, Horus is not just a myth, he is memory, a symbol, a force that lives beyond story and sculpture. He is the whisper in the storm, the falcon that rises against the winds of chaos, the eye that sees through deception, the child that heals the wound of the world. Horus is the cry of justice from the hidden places, the rhythm of the Nile in divine form. He is what rises when everything else falls, what remembers when the world forgets, what fights not for vengeance but for restoration. The part of us that refuses to let chaos reign, that rises even when wounded, that reclaims the throne. May the gods bless you, watchers of the old ways. May your path be guided by thought's wisdom, your heart kept light by my art's truth. May Isis cover you in her wings when you feel lost, and may the spirit of Horus rise within you when the world feels dark. Let Sekhet protect your steps. Let Ra's light purify your thoughts. Let the eye, whole and radiant, watch over you in waking and in sleep. May you know that the divine is not distant. It moves in you, through you, and waits for you to awaken. If the story of Horus touched something ancient in you, let your voice join the chorus. Comment below, Horus Lives. Let us know which moment opened your mind, stirred your heart, or made you look at your own journey through a different lens. Subscribe now to join the Eye of the History Store, where myth is not dead, but alive, breathing through time, waiting to be remembered. And don't miss the next chapter in our divine epic, Set, the god who wouldn't die. The storm continues, and every god has their hour. Thank you for walking this path with us, for listening not just with your ears, but with your spirit, for remembering even when the world wants you to forget. Until next time, may the falcon's wings lift you